All right, and we back on the forecast. So in Texas, a sister, Yvette Smith, was shot and killed by Bastrop Pd in her own home. Now let's see why this sister was shot dead in her own home by the police.
We're getting our first look at video from the night a Bastrop County Sheriff's deputy shot and killed a woman.
It is dash cam video played during day one of Deputy Daniel Willis's trial. A grand jury indicted him for murder after he shot and killed Yvette Smith. Chris Sadeghi watched that video and has more from Bastrop.
Both sides agree this case is going to boil down to what the jury feels are reasonable actions for a law enforcement officer, specifically the actions of Daniel Willis in a 3-second window. Dashcam video caught some of what happened, but the 3 seconds leading up to 2 gunshots will be key. Daniel Willis was called to the home on a report 2 men were fighting, and in opening statements, attorneys say that Yvette Smith was trying to get one of the men to put down a gun. But Willis, outside the home, is seen retrieving his rifle when a 911 call came in from the home that someone inside was loading the gun. Willis fired when Smith opened the door.
She opened the door. What she had in her hand?
Yvette Smith's family could hardly bear to watch and listen. Her son left the courtroom. Willis maintains he saw something in Smith's hand. Although there was a gun reported at the home, the prosecution says it was not in Smith's hand and Willis was too quick to fire.
I saw a gun.
Nobody had a gun. The gun's on the table right now. There's a gun on the table. Nobody has the gun in their hand.
Okay.
And although all the action may have happened in that 3-second window, this trial could last a week, possibly 2, as the jury's expected to hear more about the information Willis had going in to that call, a situation his attorney called a dangerous and deadly situation.
We've learned the woman shot to death by a Bastrop County Sheriff's deputy was struck twice, once in her abdomen and once on her behind. The autopsy report of Yvette Smith also showed she had a blood alcohol level of .104. That's above the legal limit for driving in Texas, though she was at home at the time. Deputy Daniel Willis shot Smith in February when he arrived at the house to respond to a dispute. Texas Rangers are overseeing the investigation into this shooting.
So this sister Yvette Smith called 911 herself because 2 people in her house were arguing. And again, we need to stop calling 911, especially for domestic situations. And especially if it has something to do with mental illness, because the police are not there to help us. This is a reason why we need our own institutions. But the sister Yvette Smith called 911, and the police claim they got a call about 2 men fighting over a gun. Now, all the witnesses say it was a father and son arguing over money, not over a gun. But even if they did get a call about 2 men fighting over a gun, they shot and killed a woman, the woman who called. Now, Officer Daniel Willis initially said this sister walked to the doorstep with a gun and she was refusing to follow his commands. And even though no witnesses or the evidence doesn't corroborate his story, he claims she threatened him with a gun and he was left with no other choice but to shoot and kill her because he feared for his life. Now, this sister Yvette Smith, who called 911, was opening the door for the cop, Daniel Willis, when he yelled police and then shot her 2 times within 3 seconds. On top of that, this cop used his own personal AR-15 to shoot this woman at point-blank range. Then a day later, the police issued a second statement which contradicted their first, saying they couldn't confirm that this woman had a gun or any kind of weapon, or that she disregarded any of the cops' demands. Now, eventually, they did end up firing this cop, and they were left with no other choice but to press charges.
A former Bastrop County Sheriff's deputy charged with murder for shooting an unarmed woman is back on trial after a hung jury 7 months ago. Daniel Willis was responding to a call when he shot Yvette Smith twice when she came to the door, even though she did not have a weapon. KXAN's Chris Sadeghi is at the courthouse in Bastrop, where there definitely will not be a hung jury this time.
On day one of this retrial, we heard and saw some of the same evidence we saw in the first trial. However, there are some key differences this time around that could sway the result. In opening statements, the state said Daniel Willis made a split-second irrational decision to pull the trigger and kill unarmed Yvette Smith. But his attorney, Albert McCaig, says split-second decisions are the ones officers have to make.
And when they do so, they're judged like this by inexperienced prosecutors, inexperienced investigators, and malicious prosecution.
Willis was responding to a disturbance call, and the caller said a gun was involved, but that gun had been put away when he got there. But the defense says Willis never got that information.
The Bastrop County Sheriff's Department communications failed in this case, and that was a huge factor in Daniel Willis not knowing that that gun was put down.
In the first trial, the jury hung, with 8 of the 12 believing Willis was guilty. This time around, the decision is all Judge Albert McCaig's, who is seeing key dashcam video of the shots on Tuesday.
But this judge will not be swayed by local political pressure. He won't be swayed by what's in the news. Vindictiveness. Political prosecution, scapegoat. That's why we're here.
The judge is not allowing audio from the courtroom in this trial. However, coming up at 6 o'clock, we'll take audio from the last trial, combine it with the video that we saw on Tuesday to give you the best look at the actions Daniel Willis took leading up to those shots that he fired. For now, we're in Bastrop. Chris Sadeghi, KXAN News.
While the murder case against former Deputy Willis continues, Bastrop County already settled a civil lawsuit over this shooting. Last April, Bastrop County agreed to pay $1.2 million to Yvette Smith's family. The family's lawsuit claimed the sheriff's office was negligent in hiring Willis. Records show Willis applied to work for the Austin Police Department but failed a psychological exam. He got a job as a jailer for Travis County. Willis took the exam to become a patrol deputy for the Travis County Sheriff's Office 3 times, but he did not pass. Then in May of 2013, Bastrop County hired him to become a deputy sheriff. We have a closer look at Willis's background at our website.
So his first trial ended up in a hung jury where 8 people said he was guilty and 4 people said he was innocent. So in a retrial, he asked for a bench trial instead of a jury trial. I guess he figured too many people were off code and this was his safest bet. So he got a bench trial, and amazingly, he got Judge Albert McCaig. Now, this is the same judge who helped pick the grand jury in the Sandra Bland case, in which they justified another black woman's murder. And to no surprise, Judge Albert McCaig decided to clear this cop of all charges.
Not guilty is the verdict for a former Bastrop County Sheriff's deputy who shot and killed an unarmed woman.
Daniel Willis was responding to a call and shot Yvette Smith when he said he thought he saw a gun. KXAN's Chris Sadeghi was in the courtroom as the emotions boiled over after this acquittal.
Last year's hung jury was leaning towards convicting Willis, but Judge Albert McCaig said he would not be influenced by media or politics and that there was plenty of blame to go around.
And it is the verdict of this court that you are not guilty of the charges stated in the indictment.
That ruling brought on the tears and brought on the anger.
Total! A total!
But Willis's attorney, Robert McCabe, echoed what the judge said, that Willis was called to that home because 2 men were fighting over a gun.
Had they not acted like fools and done those things, Daniel Willis wouldn't have been called.
By reciting a Teddy Roosevelt quote, McCaig indicated it's easy to second-guess officers without being in their shoes, and then showed the difference between a judge and a jury that was leaning toward guilty last year.
I think jurors can be swayed by their life experiences, their emotions, their local citizens. They're swayed by things they read and see.
But the judge said he would rule on the law and ruled when Yvette Smith was killed, Willis was within it.
He has been a political scapegoat for Bastrop County for 2 years. He's ready to move on with his life.
And we're told Willis has not discussed his future with his attorney, but right now he simply wants to spend time with his family.
In the statement, the judge called Yvette Smith a victim, then went on to blame the 2 men who were fighting, even though witnesses say they were fighting over money, not over a gun, and nobody had a gun. But then as Judge Albert McCaig went on to quote a Theodore Roosevelt speech from 1910, basically giving a Blue Lives Matter speech and caping for the cops, before clearing Officer Daniel Willis of all charges. Now this guy Daniel Willis was never even supposed to be a cop. He was denied by a number of police departments because he kept failing the psych evaluation. Now, for a number of police departments to turn you down for a psych evaluation, especially in Texas, something really has to be wrong. This guy even failed his patrol exam. He got a job as a CO, and even one of his supervisors wrote he needs more development in handling explosive situations. Even as a CO, his supervisor realized he needs more development in using common sense. But the Bastrop Pd decided to give him a job anyway, and they didn't even give him a psych evaluation. And his supervisor, Joey Zanowinski, was even caught tampering with his records. And he signed off on training that he didn't even do, and that he didn't get any valid signatures on. But they didn't fire his supervisor, they only suspended him for a few days. This cop, Daniel Willis, was able to murder this sister Yvette Smith, even though he was not supposed to be a cop, even though he got caught lying about the situation, even though he shot down an unarmed black woman. They still justify her murder. They still stay on code. Yet when we are the ones being murdered, and when it's our bloodshed, we cannot stay on code or even get on the code. Until this system is destroyed and we build our own system where we make sure we protect ourselves, then this thing is going to continue to happen over and over and over again. They don't care if it's a woman. They got a call about 2 men fighting and they murdered a woman. Yet here we are after hundreds of years and we're still begging and crying and asking them for justice. No one can give you justice. You have to take it for yourself. Now, if every person in her house was armed and had the mindset of not letting this cop get away with this, they will think twice about shooting down our men, our women, our children, our elderly. But while we're out here marching and begging and protesting for the last 50 years, they have no problem killing us. They have no problem shedding our blood and justifying it, and then call you the terrorist if you disagree. But until we put aside our differences for the things we agree on, like us not getting killed, like our children having the best possible opportunities in the future, then we're going to continue to be subject to their laws, their rules, and their punishments. And they can do whatever they want and get away with it. And we can't do nothing but cry about it.
Mr. Daniel J. Willis, it is the verdict of this court that you are not guilty of the charges stated in the indictment. Anything from the state? No. Anything further from the defense? No. These matters are adjourned. Thank you both for your courtesies on all points. Bullshit! That's bull. That's bull. That's the bull.
Told y'all these hoes down here, man. Some bull.
He's wrong. He murdered my daughter. He murdered her. He murdered her. Let me sit down. Let me sit down. Let me sit down. Oh, my son. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh Jesus. Jesus.
You got it. Honey, get on her side.
Thank you.
I'll be
okay. Oh, Jesus. Breathe. Call in front. Breathe. Lean up against the car. Lean up. Breathe.
This wasn't Daniel Willis driving around looking for trouble. This is 2 men fighting with weapons in a violent encounter where 911 was called. Had they not acted like fools and done those things, Daniel Willis wouldn't have been called. People call 911 for an emergency. This was the most serious type of call law enforcement can respond to. Daniel Willis responded timely, professionally, and acted appropriately. The judge recognizes that officers are forced to make split-second decisions in tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving circumstances. That's exactly what we expect of our law enforcement. That's exactly what Daniel Willis did, and if he had to do it again, he'd take the same action. The judge is absolutely right. Yvette Smith is, her family is a victim of this. She was shot and killed. But Daniel Willis is legally justified in taking the action he took, and we do not regret the action that he took that night.
Now that this happened, it just makes us insecure here.
An unarmed woman shot and killed in Bastrop County.
I think I speak for everybody saying that, I don't think we could ever trust the police after this.
Her family wants justice, and KXAN Investigates is digging for answers.
We first told you late last week about the $5 million wrongful death lawsuit filed against the Bastrop County Sheriff's Office.
Back in February, Deputy Daniel Willis shot and killed Yvette Smith as he responded to a call about two men fighting. The suit alleges Willis used unreasonable, unnecessary, and excessive force, and that previous supervisors warned he needed help with common sense in handling explosive situations.
That led KXAN investigator Robert Maxwell to dig into Willis's background. He joins us live now with what he found. Robert?
Well, Robert, Shannon, employment documents paint a picture of somebody who grew up in a small town near Houston and long dreamed of becoming a deputy sheriff. State law enforcement licensing records show us Bastrop County employed Daniel Willis as a patrol deputy for 13 months. In June, he was fired, charged with Yvette Smith's murder. Her family has long questioned how local deputies are selected and chosen. Before working in Bastrop, we discovered Daniel Willis was a jailer in Travis County for more than 8 years.
I answered the door, and there was two investigators, two of them. They told me, your mom's been involved in an accident, and I'm thinking it was a car wreck. And it was like, no, she was shot by an officer and she died.
The morning of February's officer-involved shooting, Daniel Willis had been patrolling Bastrop County for exactly 10 months. Records KXAN obtained from his former employer in neighboring Travis County show in 2007, Willis took a corrections job with the goal of one day becoming a patrol deputy. His handwritten application shows he'd also applied to Austin Police and acknowledged he failed that department's psychological exam. State licensing rules require county jailers and peace officers to pass a psychological test. Since those records are not public and there are no statewide standards, it can only be assumed Willis met Travis County's standard. In early 2008, he received his jailer's certification. Willis's employment records show he excelled here, posting perfect attendance and scoring well on performance reviews, even receiving recognition in 2009 for saving the life of a suicidal prisoner. Before long, corrections officer Willis applied to transfer to patrol duties. In 2012, his jail supervisors agreed in written evaluations. Willis appears to be mature enough to handle the responsibilities of a patrol officer, and he was not scared to handle disruptive or combative inmates. But one wrote he needed more development in handling explosive situations and the utilization of common sense. Travis County records show Willis failed his first patrol exam in 2010. It's unclear what skills he lacked. He would try 3 more times before resigning in May of 2013 to take an open deputy job in Bastrop. Since there was no gap between the law enforcement jobs, the state required no new psychological test before Willis began responding to calls in rural Bastrop County.
You're going to have to go back and look at who's hiring and who's training these people.
Now, we do know before hiring him, Bastrop County requested Daniel Willis's personnel file from the Travis County Sheriff's Office. We've requested Bastrop's employment file, and that request is now in the hands of the DA there. Now, Shannon, Robert, one source I talked with today, a longtime law enforcement attorney, says often in these cases, as is the case in many job descriptions, you get what you pay for. Better training, better hiring policies, sometimes produce better officers.
A Palm Beach County teacher is out of a job tonight after he's accused of making racist remarks in the classroom.
Now, a recording of it all under investigation right now. Whitney's live in Royal Palm Beach with the very latest. Whitney, what's going on here?
Every student here knew about the YouTube video that originally surfaced on those conservative blogs. The whole thing goes on for about 5 minutes. Here's just a little bit of the clip.
What is the scientific and systematic approach to destroying black civilization?
It starts with a question, but the voice captured in the video, supposedly posted by an anonymous Royal Palm Beach high school student last week, goes on to talk about black deities and gentrification.
You don't see soul food restaurants open up in Chinese neighborhoods, you know what I mean, Asian communities, no. You understand? But who do you see in the black community reaping economically the benefits of their dollars? Everybody but them, right?
The anonymous poster claims the voice is teacher Ezekiel Edmonds, and the setting is science class. I talked to students standing in support of the educator who say he's well liked.
We were doing a blackout for him, and he is the reason why I'm still in school and motivated.
It's not like we never opened up the science book. I got science done in there, but he taught me way better things that school doesn't teach you.
But one Royal Palm junior says discussions in science class should stay on topic.
I don't think he should lose his job or anything. I think someone just needs to
get it in his head that there's a time and place for someone's opinion.
The Palm Beach County School District is investigating whether or not Edmonds is the speaker in the recording.
Anytime we have something like this, we take it seriously.
The district spokeswoman says that Edmonds has been reassigned to a position without contacts with students.
10-day suspension for allegedly calling students dumb and using racial slurs inside his classroom. Some parents think the teacher should be fired.
Yeah, a lot of parents that I spoke with were pretty upset that the teacher was suspended and not terminated. And in this investigation report, several students came forward saying their teacher was offensive. Kernan Middle School teacher David Swiner is suspended for 10 days without pay for allegedly using the N-word in his classroom and calling students dumb.
No call for that in the classroom or around kids, period.
We got our hands on this investigative report into the teacher's allegations. More than 20 students were witnesses. In addition to claims of being aggressive towards students, he also allegedly made comments like, quote, "You all should not be dating all these different African-American boys because they are not worth it."
There's no place for that in the school system.
We went to Swiner's home to get his side of the story, but no one was home. A spokesperson for the school district said he was at school Wednesday, but not in a classroom. And this report also states that Swiner hasn't received progressive discipline in the past. However, I spoke with parents who think there should be a harsher punishment from the school district.
They should be fired, yeah, of course.
So we also have an issue of the day today. One piece on The Root discusses the ideology behind 5 types of Beckys. And so there are 5 types of Beckys. According to the Root piece, a Becky is a white woman who uses her privilege for power, who uses her privilege for a ladder, or even for an excuse.
All right, so I clearly have not taken enough women's studies courses or gender study courses in my time. I've taken a couple sociology courses, and yet I have absolutely no idea what this author is talking about. Julia, can you please enlighten us?
I will. So the overarching Beckys, there's about 5. We have Rebecca, we have Becca, we have Beckisha, we have a Reba, and then we have Beckzilla. And each one has their own type of feminism / racism. A lot of them really try, the first 4 really try to be Beckys, try to be, you know, movers and shakers in the world, and then Beckzilla at the end is
she's just like coming in to wreck everything, right?
She is, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the famous Beckys that are mentioned here are Taylor Swift, I believe, is a Rebecca. We have Tommy Loren, who is apparently a Beckzilla. And a couple other people, I think Lena Dunham, Hillary Clinton's in there, Miley Cyrus, I think, is a Reba.
Yeah.
And it just goes way beyond the fray here.
Yeah, so basically what this author is saying is regardless of how you identify, whether you identify as feminist or not, whether you try to not be racist, whether you're an ally to black people or not, no matter what you do, he's going to call you out because he lists just about every type of white woman I can think of in this list. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of why I lean more towards the Beckzilla camp, because why even try if he's just going to, if, you know, they're not going to even give examples of good Beckys. They're not going to, you know, try to applaud the people who are trying to even help those communities. It's just all negative. No matter what you do, you're going to get slammed for it. Why even try?
Exactly. He even mentions in the first 4 types of Beckys, disregarding the Beckzilla, number 5, all of these women are trying their hardest. They're trying to be good movers, shakers. Some of them have some timidity. Other women really go out there and they try to be activists, even if they're liberal or progressive. But no matter how hard they try to be these Beckys, just their innate sense of being a white woman. If you notice in the picture as well, 4 of the 5 are blonde, blue-eyed white women. Just because they're white, they cannot fully move the progressive movement along, or whatever their ideology is.
This is precisely why identity politics has failed. It's because people like this will call out entire groups in a negative manner, but then get upset when people do the same thing to them.
Exactly, and you know what? I completely identify as a Beckzilla. You want a Becky? You got one right here. I'll be your Beckzilla.
I love that. Final point on this tonight is that The author of this piece talking about white women is none other than a man.
A man! And I think he just mansplained feminism to us.
We just got mansplained by The Root.
We absolutely did. So thank you, Michael Harriot at The Root, who decided to mansplain feminism to us, particularly on the basis of race, but also on the basis of gender. So thanks, Michael.
Seems like a real nice guy.